Ever wondered about the most controversial Roman emperor? No, it's not Caligula or Nero, but the lesser-known Elagabalus. Born in the late 2nd century, in the heart of the Syrian desert, Elagabalus ascended to Rome's throne at the tender age of 14. This youthful emperor, known for his eccentricities, ruled over the Roman Empire from 218 to 222 Common Era. His reign, though short-lived, was marked by unusual decisions and practices that stirred the pot in Rome's traditionally conservative society. From his religious reforms to his extravagant lifestyle, Elagabalus was a figure who pushed boundaries and challenged norms. Yet, despite his controversial status, he remains an enigmatic figure in the annals of Roman history, often overshadowed by his more infamous peers. So who exactly was this youthful, eccentric emperor? Let's delve into his story. Elagabalus, also known as Marcus Aurelius Antoninus, was born into a powerful Syrian family. The city of his birth, Emesa, was a rich tapestry of culture, nestled in the heart of the Roman Empire's eastern provinces. Within the bustling streets and grand architecture of Emesa, young Elagabalus spent his early years. From a tender age, Elagabalus was entrusted with an extraordinary responsibility. He served as a priest at the temple of the sun god Elagabalus, a deity revered by his family and city. This was more than a mere duty. It was a profound spiritual journey that would shape the course of his life. The sun god's name, Elagabalus, was so deeply entwined with his identity that it would forever be remembered as his moniker. In the temple's hallowed halls, Elagabalus was immersed in religious rites and ceremonies that transcended the mundane world. He danced in the sun's brilliant light, donned the sacred robes, and bore the weighty emblem of the sun god. This spiritual upbringing, deeply rooted in the mysteries of the sun, would leave an indelible mark on him, influencing his later years in ways no one could have predicted. Behind the scenes of his religious duties, another powerful force was at play. His grandmother, Julia Maesa, a formidable woman of influence and cunning, she was a guiding figure in Elagabalus's life. Julia Maesa's ambition for her family's rise to power was as vast as the Roman Empire itself, and she saw in her grandson a means to this end. As Elagabalus grew older, his grandmother's influence became more apparent. She was the architect of an elaborate plan that would not only shape his destiny, but also alter the course of Roman history. Julia Maesa's machinations, coupled with Elagabalus's unique upbringing, prepared him for a life far removed from the tranquility of Emesa and the sacred rituals of the sun god's temple. Little did the young priest know that his life was about to change forever. His destiny was not confined to the sun-drenched halls of a temple in Emesa, but to the marble-clad corridors of power in Rome. His story was just beginning. At just 14, Elagabalus was thrust into the limelight of the Roman Empire. A bold statement, isn't it? But how did this happen, you ask? Well, it was all thanks to the political maneuvering of his grandmother, Julia Maesa. Julia Maesa was a woman of considerable influence. A sister of the late Empress Julia Domna, she was well versed in the workings of the imperial court. When her nephew, Emperor Caracalla, was assassinated and replaced by Macrinus, she was exiled. But this did not dampen her spirit. She orchestrated a grand plan to return her family to power. Elagabalus, who was serving as a priest in the temple of the sun god Elagabal in Emesa, was chosen as the face of this plan. Julia Maesa declared that Elagabalus was the illegitimate son of the late Emperor Caracalla, and thus the rightful heir to the throne. This claim, though unproven, gained considerable traction among the legions stationed near Emesa, who were still loyal to the memory of Caracalla. The stage was set for a civil war. The forces loyal to Elagabalus, led by the experienced General Gannus, clashed with the forces of Macrinus in a battle near Antioch. Despite being outnumbered, the army backing Elagabalus emerged victorious, thanks to their superior tactics and the element of surprise. Macrinus was captured and later executed, while Elagabalus was declared the new emperor. At the tender age of 14, Elagabalus found himself at the helm of the Roman Empire. His ascension was not the result of a hereditary line of succession, Nor was it the outcome of a military coup. It was the result of shrewd political maneuvering and the charisma of a young boy who was thrust into a role much bigger than himself. His ascension to power, however, was only the beginning of his story. The real test would be in how he would handle the responsibilities of an emperor. With the civil war won, Elagabalus, now the youngest Roman emperor, was set to leave a mark on the empire. But what kind of mark would that be? Well, that's a story for another scene. Elagabalus's reign was far from ordinary, and it shook the very foundations of Roman society. His rule was marked by his fervent devotion to the Syrian sun god Elagabalus, whose name he had adopted. In a move that was both audacious and unprecedented, he sought to elevate this deity above Jupiter, the king of the Roman gods. This was a seismic shift for the Romans, who held their traditional pantheon in high regard. The young emperor even went so far as to construct a grand temple, the Elagabalium, on Rome's Palatine Hill in honor of his namesake. However, it was not just his religious reforms that caused a stir. Elagabalus's personal life was equally, if not more, controversial. His marriages in particular were a source of scandal. He had as many as 5 wives during his short reign, including a Vestal Virgin, a sacred priestess sworn to chastity, a union that was considered a grave sacrilege. In addition, Elagabalus's gender identity was a topic of much debate and speculation. Some ancient sources suggest that he may have identified as a woman and sought to live his life as such. He is said to have dressed in women's clothing and performed traditionally feminine roles. He even took the unprecedented step of offering vast sums of money to any physician who could provide him with female genitalia. These actions and decisions were far beyond the understanding or tolerance of Roman society at the time, and they sparked widespread outrage and criticism. Yet they also served to paint a picture of an emperor who was unafraid to challenge societal norms and religious conventions, regardless of the consequences. Controversial as he was, Elagabalus's reign was filled with reforms and changes that were unheard of in Rome. His reign was a whirlwind of innovation, scandal, and defiance, a stark departure from the traditional Roman rule, and one that would leave an indelible mark on the pages of history. All reigns must end, and Elagabalus's was no exception. The emperor's eccentricities, once tolerated, began to grate on the Roman military and nobility. His religious reforms, his perceived disregard for Roman tradition, and his personal lifestyle choices were seen as too radical, even in an empire known for its extravagance. Whispers of discontent grew louder, and the young emperor, barely 18, found himself facing an increasingly hostile court. The Praetorian Guard, once his protectors, were the ones who orchestrated his downfall. In the winter of 222, Elagabalus and his mother were assassinated, their bodies unceremoniously dumped into the Tiber River, a grim end to a reign that had begun with such promise. Yet, as with many historical figures, the legacy of Elagabalus is not solely defined by his downfall. His influence on later emperors, particularly with regards to religious tolerance, cannot be ignored. He was one of the first Roman rulers to promote the syncretism of Roman and Eastern religions, a policy that would be adopted by future emperors. In art and literature, Elagabalus became a symbol of decadence, a cautionary tale of the dangers of unchecked power and youthful arrogance. His life has been immortalized in numerous works, from the scandalous accounts of ancient Roman historians to the more sympathetic portrayals of modern novelists and playwrights. Yet, perhaps the most enduring aspect of Elagabalus's legacy is the debate it continues to spark. Was he a misunderstood youth thrust into a position of power he was ill-prepared for? Or was he a reckless ruler whose disregard for tradition led to his downfall? These questions and the larger discussion they inspire about the nature of leadership and the weight of cultural norms ensure that the story of Elagabalus remains relevant even today. From a young Syrian priest to a controversial Roman emperor, Elagabalus's story is a fascinating glimpse into the complexities of Roman history. Elagabalus's reign, though brief, left a lasting impact on the Roman Empire. His early life was marked by a swift and unlikely rise to power, propelled by the machinations of his ambitious relatives. As a young ruler, he was thrust into the complex world of Roman politics and society, a world he would leave forever changed. His reign was marked by controversy and change. He introduced new religious practices, challenging the traditional Roman pantheon, and his lifestyle and personal choices were often at odds with the conservative Roman society. Yet, despite the turbulence and scandal, Elagabalus left his mark on the empire. His impact can be seen in the archaeological discoveries of his reign, the structures he built, and the changes he made to Roman religious practices. His story, filled with ambition, controversy, and ultimately tragedy, is a fascinating chapter in the rich tapestry of Roman history. While Elagabalus may not be as well known as other Roman emperors, his story is a testament to the diverse and complex nature of Roman history